Can I ask Officer Top Table to introduce us, please?
Hello, Simon Elias in the Council's legal team.
Sarah James, I'm the Deputy Head of Development Management.
Karina Haskins from Democratic Services.
Please now remind councillors and members of the public to switch their phones off or put them silent, please. This meeting is being filmed and a recording will be available on the council's website. Anybody speaking that does not wish to be filmed should make themselves known as a camera operator. Emergency evacuation procedure, please.
Thank you, Chair. If a continuous alarm sounds, you must evacuate the building and proceed to the assembly point. From this room, you follow the illuminated green signs to the exit using either the marble staircase at the end of the building or the main staircase. Please do not use the lifts. The assembly point for this building is in Orange Grove on the green outside Brown's Restaurant. Thank you.
Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Apologies from Councillor Tim Warren.
Thank you. Declaration of interest, Councillor Grosley.
Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you very much. Just to remind the committee, I'm Council's representative on the Cotswold National Landscape. This is just an individual item, so I do not feel that I am compromising the position on Cotswold Landscape, and so therefore will be taking part and voting on this item.
Okay, items of public statements and questions.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just go through the procedure. So speakers will be called to speak immediately after the case officer has made their presentation about the application. The order of speakers and time allowed will be as follows. Objectors will speak first and they'll be allowed 3 minutes in total. Supporters will speak next and be allowed 3 minutes in total. And ward councillors who are not on the committee who have indicated they wish to speak may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes. And you'll see on the screens there's a timer which will give you an indication of the time as it goes. Thank you.
Okay, minutes of meeting 21st of January. Do we agree to the record? Someone move it, please. Councillor Crossley, a second, please. Those in favour, please. It's clear. Right, the main plan lands is this morning. 26 Wedgwood Road. David McPadden, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Just wait for the presentation to be up on the screen. We need to change the mode, sorry. So perfect. Sorry about that, everybody. Right, the first item on the agenda this morning is a planning application for a change of use of a single dwelling in use class C3 of the Planning Use Classes Order to a 7-bedroom house of multiple occupation sui generis use. The site is located at 26 Wedgwood Road in Whiteway, Bath, EA2. To run you through the site location, the site is in the Twerton Whiteway area to the southwest of the city centre, around 3 kilometres southwest of Bath city centre. This is an aerial view of the area surrounding the site. So the property itself is highlighted with the green arrow. You can see the surrounding context, which includes a variety of blocks of flats, but also a series of dwelling houses on the streets there. Turning to the site itself, the site is a mid-terraced property. It's quite an unusual property in that it has both front and back gardens, but the front gardens do not have any direct vehicular access from the street, and the front gardens are completely open onto the public open space at the front of the site there. So the site is directly opposite a flat block, 6-storey flat block known as Mead House. This is zooming in a little bit on the property itself. The property is situated one house in from the end of the terrace. You can see a bit more context for how the house appears and the fact it's adjoining the neighbouring houses on both sides. You can see the open front gardens at the front there with the footpaths joining the footpath to the front of the site, and then you can see the enclosed rear garden at the back. So in this part of the city, the area is served by 2 bus services. You've got the route U4, which runs from Bath Spa University to the University of Bath via Twerton, Southdown and Odddown. So that's the route you can see on the left-hand side of the screen there, with the site highlighted with the star. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see Route 5 bus service, which runs from Bath bus station to Twerton and Whiteway return. So those 2 services both have stops nearby the site. The U4 service runs 2 services per hour, roughly 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The number 5 service runs a longer period, starting earlier, around 5 a.m., running to 11 p.m. with 4 services per hour. So this is the property itself, a photo of the house that we're considering today. It's a 4-bedroom house, which was built in the 1950s. It's constructed with bath stone and timber cladding, and has a tiled pitch roof. These are plans showing the existing layout of the property. So at the minute, the property is a single-family dwelling. As mentioned, it's a 4-bedroom house with all of those bedrooms at first floor level. And then the ground floor, which you can see on the left side, comprises the living accommodation with utility room, a lean-to in the back right corner, kitchen, dining and lounge. So these are the proposed plans. So this application this morning seeks planning permission for material change of use of the property from a single dwelling to a house of multiple occupation. The change of use would involve internal structural and layout changes to create accommodation in the house for 7 people. So the proposals would involve creation of an open plan communal kitchen, living and dining room facing the back garden at the back of the property. You can see that on the left side of the plan, on the left side. The area that's proposed for the kitchen, living, dining space is 26 square metres. And then alongside that, at ground floor level, is proposed to create 2 ground floor bedrooms that would be located to the front and the rear of the property. Then there would also be a wet room, shower, bathroom at ground floor level, as well as the utility room would be retained at ground floor level as well. And then on the right-hand side of this plan, you can see the proposed first floor layout. At first floor, the proposal is to create 5 bedrooms at first floor level. They would be located 2 at the front, 2 at the rear, and then 1 off to the side in the side link that adjoins the adjacent property to the south. The 5 bedrooms would all be between 6.5 and 7.5 square metres. So turning to the external alterations to the property, I've highlighted these on the plans on the left and on the right side. I'll just run through the external works that are proposed, which are relatively limited. So it's proposed to replace existing windows and doors, as well as upgrade the lean-to roof from its current polycarbonate state to a single-ply flat roof. So that's the flat roof on the left side of the property at ground floor level to the rear, because that lean-to is proposed to be converted to a bedroom. So the roof on that structure needs to be replaced. And as part of those works, the current patio doors would be removed and replaced with a traditional window on that left side. To the right-hand side, new patio doors would replace an existing window on the dining room. And at first floor level, where the current bathroom and toilets are, with those small windows that you can see to the rear at first floor level, that would be replaced by a bedroom. So it's proposed to have a larger traditional style window at first floor level. And all works that are proposed to the exterior would respect existing exterior finishes. The proposals also include installation of a bin store and a cycle parking shed at the site. The cycle parking shed's located in the rear garden, as seen on the plan. It would be a metal cycle store that would be installed there. To the front of the house, a bin store is proposed as a timber structure that would house bin and recycling receptacles just to the right-hand side of the entrance to the utility room. So those 2 facilities are proposed there. Turning to the public consultation on the application, we've had 7 objections to this application and 1 comment in support. The grounds of objections have related to the level and amount of HMOs that are currently in this area. There have been concerns over loss of a family home in the area. There's also been concerns about the proposals representing overdevelopment of the site. Some people have suggested that the communal area in the proposed house is too small for 7 people. There's been concerns raised about car parking demand and the impact that this would have on the safe navigation of the surrounding highway network. There's also been a concern raised about loss of families in the area and the impact this has on local schools and facilities. So the 1 comment in support, the commenter mentioned that the house has been empty for a long time and they were glad to see it come back into some use. And then they just noted anecdotally that they never had any issues with students in the area who had generally been polite and chatty in their experience. The application has been referred to the Planning Committee due to an objection by the Twerton Ward Councillor, Sarah Moore. So just to run you through the assessment that's been undertaken by officers on this application, the key planning policy which governs the acceptability of house of multiple occupation in Bath and North East Somerset is policy H2 of the local plan. The policy states that proposals for change of use of dwellings to HMOs will be refused if the site is in an area with a high concentration of existing HMOs, having regard to the HMO SPD. So the HMO SPD sets two criteria where a high concentration of HMO exists. So these two criteria are where sandwiching of a property results from the development. So a dwelling is sandwiched on both sides by HMO, and also in scenarios where more than 10% of properties within a 100-metre radius become HMOs. Other points to consider in Policy H2 include whether or not the proposal would cause harm to amenity, that's neighbouring amenity, due to incompatibility with adjacent uses, harm to privacy or harm to noise of neighbouring property. There's also criteria in the policy relating to the impact on the surrounding transport network. So that would be another issue that could result in refusal of an HMO application if there was severe transport impacts. The standard of accommodation is also relevant, so we have to consider that as well. Energy performance, the proposals have to meet a minimum EPC grade C rating. Then there's two other criteria in relation to whether or not the proposal causes an unacceptable loss of mix and size and type of accommodation in the area, as well as the potential to prejudice commercial uses. So that's the policy that the application's being considered against this morning. So to run you through the assessment undertaken by officers on this specific case, you can see this plan shows a layout of the existing area. So the property itself is highlighted with the red star at the bottom of the screen. So this is looking 50 metres roughly north and east and west of the site. And you can see that the purple squares on the plan are HMOs that the council is aware of through planning permissions and licensing data in the area. You can see that there are quite a number of HMOs on this particular stretch of Wedgwood Road. So out of the properties to the north, 4 of those adjacent properties are HMOs there, and there's also 2 further HMOs to the east of the site. And then further north again, you have two further HMOs there. And then looking at the area, the 50 metres or so south of the site, so this is the southern part of the radius, you can see that there's 4 further HMOs identified in the area to the south. So when this is taken together, at the minute there is a total of 11 HMOs within a 100-metre radius of the site. Within this 100-metre radius, there is a total of 122 properties at the minute, residential dwellings. So when that's considered and when those stats are converted to a percentage, the proposal would increase the number of HMOs from 11 to 12, and 12 as a percentage of 122 dwellings within that 100-metre radius takes you to a total percentage of 9.8%. So the HMO SPD concentration test sets a 10% threshold. So it's acknowledged that this case is very close to that 10% threshold. However, 9.8% as a percentage remains below 10%, and therefore the proposal at the minute is found to comply with the concentration requirements of Policy H2 and is in compliance with the HMO SPD. And there would also be, it's important to note that there's no sandwiching of any adjacent single dwelling resulting from the proposals. So the scheme is found to meet the HMO concentration tests of Policy H2 and the SPD at the minute. So just for clarity on the methodology that officers use when we're undertaking the count, this shows you that even if a small part of the curtilage or the plot of a house is included. We include those properties in our count, so irrespective of whether or not they're dwellings or HMOs, if that 100-metre radius just clips the curtilage or the boundary of the property, we include those in the count. And then also when we count flats, the HMO SPD provides guidance on how flats are counted, and it states that where the 100-metre radius captures any part of a building containing flats, the council will endeavour to establish the number of flats that fall in part or in whole within the 100-metre radius. So in this case, we've counted the flat blocks that are within the 100-metre radius. So there's there's three actually. There's 3 flat blocks that fall within the 100-metre radius in this case. You've got Mead House, Ellen House, and 1 to 19 Wedgwood Road, which are all flats. Both Mead House and Ellen House are counted as 18 dwellings, and 1 to 19 Wedgwood Road are counted as 18 dwellings and 1 HMO, because one of those flats in numbers 1 to 19 Wedgwood Road is an HMO, and so it's included in the HMO, the 11 HMOs that have been counted. So to run through the assessment undertaken on living standards, the HMO SPD requires that we use the council's licensing and amenity room standards. So these set out where proposals provide accommodation for 7 occupiers. The house must provide a communal space of a minimum of 22 square metres, of which 9.5% should be, or 9.5 square metres should be kitchen. So in this case, the house, following conversion, would provide 26 square metres of communal space. So it does exceed that 22 square metre minimum standard. In relation to bedroom sizes, single bedrooms, to meet the licensing standards, need to be a minimum of 6.5 square metres. In this case, the bedrooms vary in size between 6.6 square metres, so just above that 6.5 threshold, and 8.5 square metres, so bedroom 5 up on the first floor is 8.5 square metres, so comfortably above the 6.5 metre threshold there. So as a whole, the house meets the licensing space standards, and therefore it's assessed to provide acceptable accommodation for a 7-person HMO, and this will be confirmed through the licensing process prior to a licence being granted for operation of this HMO. So the overall recommendation to the committee this morning is that the change of use is not assessed to lead to any of the unacceptable impacts identified in Policy H2 that would warrant refusal of the planning application. So the proposal is identified to avoid a severe transport impact. The area has good bus links, cycle parking facilities and bin storage are provided. There's double yellow lines around local junctions which should protect them from inappropriate car parking, and on-street parking in the vicinity of the site is unrestricted and managed by individuals on a first-come, first-served basis. In relation to harm to amenity and the impact on neighbouring properties, one of the neighbouring properties is already an HMO, so the proposal is compatible with that use. The other neighbouring property has recently been sold, but it's a residential use, and officers do not find that the change in intensity from 4 bedrooms to 7 bedrooms would cause a significant amenity impact to that neighbouring property. The property already achieves the EPC Grade C requirement of Policy H2. In relation to the mix, type and size of accommodation, the vast majority of housing in the area would remain as single-family dwellings and a mix of flats, which are also dwellings, So this proposal, as presented, would result in 9.8% of the properties in the area being HMOs. The majority of housing in the area would still be dwellings of a range of different sizes and types, predominantly 3-bedroom properties. In relation to commercial uses, there's no commercial uses at the site, so this isn't relevant. And as discussed, the property wouldn't result in sandwiching of any single dwelling, and the proposal remains below that 10% threshold, as well as providing an acceptable standard of accommodation. So overall, the proposal is assessed to comply with the key policy, Policy H2 of the local plan, and the guidance within the HMO SPD. Officers have not identified any material consideration, either through the public consultation exercise or through assessment of the application, that would warrant refusal of this application. So the officer's recommendation this morning is that the application should be permitted, subject to conditions securing installation of the cycle parking prior to occupation and completion of the works in accordance with the plans that are submitted. So that concludes the officer's presentation, and I will be happy to answer any questions from members of the Plan Committee following the public forum. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Public speakers, Councillor Sarah Moore.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to come to committee this morning. I'm Councillor Sarah Moore, one of the ward councillors of Twerton Whiteway. I've come today to strongly object to the HMO application on Wedgwood Road. The officer states this would take the concentration up to 9.8%. However, I believe this is adversely affected by the blocks of flats that fall within the 100-metre radius and is not concentrated specifically on the 3 to 4 bedroom family housing numbers that are available here. The officer also stated that he's counted 18 flats in blocks 1 to 19 of Wedgwood Road, where there are only 10. Therefore, I don't think this actually does meet the concentration numbers. As the committee will have seen from the site visit, the property is a row of 7 houses, which has a road at the top and the bottom. The row of houses already has 4 HMOs within it, with at least a further 7 other legal HMOs within the radius, as well as a couple of illegal HMOs that I have reported that cannot be counted at present. I feel this is now too many for this area. The greed of this developer would mean 7 bedrooms put into a 4-bedroom property, with one of these bedrooms being just 1.5 square metres over the minimum approved bedroom size. This size is also comparable to the size of a prison cell that should be between 6 and 7 square metres. This is not acceptable for somebody to live in. The plans provided have a lack of clarity. The application states no new materials to be used externally. However, bedroom 2 is placed in the current lean-to. It's not clear if this has sufficient insulation against temperature or noise, or is even stable to become a bedroom. The communal area also shows no layout of the kitchen and living space, which means there's no confirmation that the kitchen will actually meet the required minimum size for 7 occupants. The pre-application clearly stated that it appears unlikely that 7 bedrooms can fit within the property whilst providing suitable levels of amenity for each, including a window and suitable bathroom spaces. Looking at the plans, the bathroom sizes are 2.7 square metres and 3.11 square metres, where the guidelines clearly state they should be a minimum of 3.6 square metres. Why has this not been picked up? This property really is not acceptable for future tenants based on the small sizes proposed. The U4 bus service referred to is a subsidised service and is currently at risk. We cannot be guaranteed that this service will continue, and therefore I do not believe the transport network is sufficient to accommodate another HMO here. The location of the bicycle storage would mean it is unlikely to be used, as bikes would need to be carried or wheeled through the property to use them, meaning mud and mess which the tenants would be liable for being traipsed through the house. There is no on-street space available for more cars. We already have all of the HMOs parking up on Kelston View, not within the road that they are actually based. I would therefore urge the committee to refuse this application. We need more family homes of 4 or more bedrooms, not less. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Questions from officers, please, members. Councillor Grosley.
Thank you, Chair. Could the officer, as I recall the site visit, and I hope I haven't mixed up two different sites, there was a stairwell up to a floored and prepared attic room.
Wrong application.
That's the wrong application. I'm sorry, I've got those two wrong. Sorry about that.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you. Can I just ask regarding sandwiching? There's obviously quite a concentration of existing HMOs. Am I right in thinking that the adjacent houses are already HMOs, so therefore there would be no C3 house that would be sandwiched by the result of this application being approved?
Yeah, I do apologise. I did miss the sandwiching assessment a little bit in my presentation. Yeah, so the neighbouring properties to either side of this site, the one to the north, number 28, is an HMO currently, and the one on the other side of that is not an HMO, and then the one further up from that is an HMO again. So the property two doors up is already sandwiched. Adding this one does not change that situation, so that doesn't cause sandwiching. The sandwiching already exists. To the south, the neighbouring property in that direction, number 24, is the property that's recently been sold, so it's currently vacant. That is a single dwelling, and then the one to the other side of that is also a single dwelling. So number 22 is a single dwelling. So the creation of an HMO to the north of number 24 at number 26 would not cause sandwiching of number 24 because it would just create an HMO on one side and not the other side. Is that clear?
Okay, I've got quite a few there. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. When we did the site visit, there was a sort of indication that the heating system was going to be changed and the boiler was going to be taken out. Is that correct? And what were they going to, what I didn't quite gather was what they were going to move to from a system that is currently a combi boiler. That's the first question. And the second question is, Councillor Hughes and I went up and down Eleanor Close, which is the sort of parallel road behind coming off Wedgwood Road. Is that a resident? It was absolutely jammed full of cars, and this is at midday. So is that a residence parking area, or what, are there any restrictions on the occupants of this dwelling parking there?
So to answer the first question, the requirements for HMOs is that they achieve the energy performance C grade rating. So this property already achieves that standard in that the applicant has provided a copy of the EPC certificate, which clarifies that the house is currently a C grade. Therefore, from a planning perspective, there's no requirement to upgrade the performance of the dwelling in terms of its energy and efficiency. So we haven't got any details as part of the planning application on what they intend to do. They did mention on site they intended to replace the boiler with another combi boiler, which would be subject to building regulations control, but there's no planning requirements relating to the heating system in the property. Turning to Eleanor Close, there's no residence parking zone in this area. The on-street parking is uncontrolled. There's double yellow lines at junctions to ensure that people do not park irresponsibly and cause visibility and manoeuvrability issues around junctions. The parking in the area is accepted by officers to be tight and well used. I don't think there's any denial of that, but it's not found that the proposal, even though it would be an increase in intensity, would result in a severe transport impact. based on the increase in accommodation. I would point out as well that it is, of course, half-term this week, so it's possible that there might have been more cars around on the streets in the area this week compared to other weeks, but I don't know the area well enough personally to comment on that.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question myself from the chair at the moment. Are you aware that flats 1 and 2 Mead House do not exist, and it was converted to by office of the council offices over 15 years ago, and is now occupied by Southside Public Project Centre? So your calculation then would be inaccurate. Would that not then take it over 10%?
The calculation has been based on the address points that we've got on our system, which are based on the latest council data, so they should be accurate.
1 and 2 Mead House haven't existed for at least 15 years, maybe longer now. And that is owned by Bath Office of the council building and leased out to Southside Public Project Centre. So can you do some checking whilst we have questions, please? Councillor Leach.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Moore raised 2 challenges to the officer, and I'd be interested to hear the officer's response. One of them was that numbers 1 through 19, sorry, I can't remember the street name, was not counted as 10 residences, where it should have been. It's counted as more. And the other is that the bathrooms are too small and don't pass the threshold. I'd be interested in the officer's response to those 2 challenges.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the first part of the question. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, the first point was that... Would you like to answer?
So when you said your speech, you said that numbers 1 to 19 were counted as 18 properties, whereas there are odd number properties only, and so there are only 10 within that building, not 18. So I've asked whether you have actually incorrectly calculated based on that as well.
Wait, which building are we talking about?
1 through 19 Wedgwood Road. You said there were 18 properties in there when you said your speech. They're odd number properties, which means there's only 10 in that building, not 18. So you said there were 18 in Mead, 18 in Ellen, and 18...
Mr Moore, can I ask you to stop? You can't ask questions as multiple times the officer, okay? Our members can ask a question for you, though. Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, might I have a response from
Sorry,
the officer?
Councillor Leach.
Yeah, I am happy to try and answer. It is quite tricky to account for specific properties, and this is something that probably should have been picked up with the case officer during the application process. And kind of, if you did have concerns about particular properties and wanted to look into those, the case officer would have been very happy to answer those questions during the process. I think so. We've counted the flats based on the number of properties which are shown on the council's own mapping services. That's the data that we've used for those. They shouldn't be showing inaccuracies because the council has accurate records of residential properties in the area. So we believe that data should be accurate.
You'll be Sarah James in now, David.
Thank you, Chair. So the matter of whether the council's data in respect of HMOs is being brought up today, in this forum the officer is unable to check some of the information that has been provided. Clearly, if during the course of an application and prior to getting to committee our data is queried, we would investigate that, so we are able to come clearly to members with absolute clarity as to what the council's data says and whether it's accurate or not. These matters obviously being raised today enables very little opportunity for us to go back and check some of the things that are being raised. If it makes a material difference to the outcome of members' decisions today, then my advice would be that you defer the application and enable the officer to check all of the queries that you are raising in regards to the data, if we are unable to clarify that today.
Councillor Hughes and Councillor Gordon.
Sorry, I think there's still one question from Councillor Leach outstanding to do with bathroom sizes.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm not aware of any minimum standard requirements for bathroom sizes, so I can't respond to that, unfortunately. Sorry.
Okay.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Okay, a couple of questions. I mean, first of all, do we have any information about the party wall construction? I note that on one side we're converting what is now currently a garage to 2 bedrooms, a wet room and a utility room. So I'm just wondering what the potential effect is on that, on the loss of amenity for the neighbour in terms of the party wall construction.
So I think you're talking about the relationship with the house to the south. So the proposals in that area at ground floor level.
Oh, sorry, not the garage. Sorry, the extension to the side.
Yeah. So there's 1 bedroom being created in that area. Otherwise, it's remaining as a bathroom and a utility room and a bedroom, which already is a bedroom. So there's one additional bedroom being created against the party wall. Building regs would, of course, control the construction, ensuring that the construction of new bedrooms meets appropriate building standards, and that should ensure sufficient acoustic separation between the properties. So that isn't something that, from the planning perspective, we would consider 1 additional bedroom to cause harm to amenity that would warrant the refusal of planning permission. Somebody could have altered the internal layout in this property without planning permission to create a new bedroom at ground floor level, and it wouldn't be subject to any planning control. So we have to take material considerations like that into account.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. We did 2 site visits, both on HMOs, and it's difficult to try and separate them out when we're looking at the details today. My second question is, the bike store is only accessible through the house. So we have a communal area which is measured at 26 square metres. However, surely part of that is effectively a corridor to enable you to access the rear of the house, to access the bike store. So is that really a sensible way of calculating a commercial area when a section of it should be really identified as a corridor?
So, the location of the bike store, it's accepted by officers. The layout's not ideal. We would love to see that bike store be in a more accessible position with a secondary means of access that didn't require people to travel through the house. But it's a terrace property with no separate access to the rear garden. So the site is constrained in that regard. I guess the alternative would be putting it at the front of the house, where the bin store is located, but that then creates security issues, having a cycle store completely accessible to the public from the street. So in this case, a decision has been made for the bike store to be in that more secure position, hopefully to keep the bikes of residents less likely to be victim of theft, and that's certainly the advice that our crime prevention officer would give on the matter. So that's why the bike store is in the rear garden. In terms of the impact that has on the space standards calculation, it's an open plan kitchen, living, dining space. There's going to need to be a corridor through that space to get to the patio doors onto the rear garden. So it would just be a case of that space doubling up for that purpose. And there's no guidance in the licensing standards about that.
I'm just concerned, how do we calculate a bike store being a realistic proposition rather than a box ticking exercise to tick a box on the application form, where from what I can see, it's not necessarily realistic that it's actually going to be used, in which case we'd end up with issues to do with parking, where people are using cars rather than bicycles, where we're trying to create a sustainable location here. The communal area seems to be doing multiple things for 7 people, and it concerns me that it's inadequate.
So the communal area, as mentioned, is 4 square metres above the minimum licensing standard, so it does have additional space. It's been assessed to meet the policy requirements, which are what we're considering, and yeah, fully accepted on the cycle store location not being ideal, but we felt it was preferential to include some cycle parking so that it could be used, even if it is more difficult to be used. So we put it in what we feel is the least worst location.
Councillor Gawley.
I think one of the questions, going back to the numbers, and something that Councillor Moore raised, was the number of unregistered HMOs in the area. And she's aware of some. I mean, obviously, if they're unregistered, then maybe they're not on BAME's data, but I think we need to factor that in. I think, so there is a question about whether, if we're heading for 9.8%, then, would it be tipped over with a number of known but unregistered HMOs? That's one question. And I think the other question I have is whether, because there is a block of flats with, whether it's 10 flats in it or however many flats in it, whether that then dilutes the numbers of family houses are available. And it is, I think, a shame that we're losing family houses when potentially flats might be more appropriate for HMOs than the family houses. But there is a question about the number of illegal or unlicensed HMOs in the area and whether we should be factoring that in.
So I'm aware that one particular property, which was believed to be an unregistered HMO, number 14 Eleanor Close, was mentioned to the case officer during the course of the application, and they investigated whether or not that was an unregistered HMO. The council's enforcement team had actually investigated a report about that property in April last year. It turned out that that property was a 2-bedroom house and therefore could not be an HMO, in that it only had 2 bedrooms and it was only being occupied by 2 people. So it was confirmed that that wasn't an HMO. If there are other cases, they should absolutely be reported to the council's enforcement team for investigation. But we believe that the data that we've used to reach our conclusion on this case is accurate, and that is one example where there has been a report about a property being an HMO, but actually when people went out to check the house, it turned out it wasn't.
Councillor McPhee.
So I would support or even propose a deferment because these numbers seem to me to be crucial if those properties aren't there.
Okay, we'll come down a second. Any more speakers? Councillor? Okay. We'll get to debate in a second, okay? Councillor Jackson.
One of the objectors has mentioned overdevelopment of the site and loss of amenity, which the second one is a bit more iffy because if you decide to live in a residence like this, that's your choice. I can't see that one's relevant, but if you could say something about what constitutes overdevelopment of the site in this particular context.
Overdevelopment in the planning process is a very difficult and challenging concept, in that we don't have a policy relating to overdevelopment. We have a policy which relates to scenarios where HMOs are and are not acceptable, and the assessment presented by officers is that this case is a case, it's very finely balanced in terms of we're right at the cusp of the level of HMOs that are acceptable in this area, but this case does come out on the right side, and that's the officer's assessment that's presented this morning. Overdevelopment generally should relate to matters such as character and appearance, possibly, but the external changes that are proposed in this instance are so minor that most of them could be undertaken without planning permission. So I don't think there's grounds that the site is being overdeveloped from a character and appearance perspective. I guess you have examples on the street of other HMOs, the properties to the north there. Actually, they're very well maintained properties. They've been finished nicely. I guess they're being rented out, so they have to be kept in a good state of repair. I think it's a very hard argument to make that those properties represent overdevelopment in that context.
Mr. Jackson?
Now, we do have to bear in mind that students are no longer in monastic orders, and it's not just a question of 7 people being there, but probably partners, socialising and so on.
So yeah, it meets the licensing standards for the number of people that would live in the property, the 7 occupants. So it meets those standards. Visitors are just there for a temporary period, so we wouldn't allocate any additional space. Whenever you're visiting anywhere, it's a choice to be there or not to be there. So that wouldn't be something that we could refuse this planning application this morning and have confidence that those reasons would stand up at appeal based on visitors to the property and the immunity of visitors.
Okay, one more question from me, then we'll open debate. Can you remind us of the numbers of dwellings that you say are in the area at the moment, please?
So the data that we've used to make the assessment, which we believe to be fully accurate, is 122 residential properties. So there's 122 properties in the area. There's 11 HMOs currently, and that would increase to 12 HMOs, and that gives you a figure of 9.8%.
So a pair of questions for me, I think is obvious what I was asked now. 1 and 2 Mead House do not exist and haven't existed for at least 20 years, being actually rented out by Southside Public Project Centre, who took over from housing offices run by Barpool North East Subject Council. That calculation would then take us to 10% of the remove, wouldn't it?
I believe that Mead House has been counted for the appropriate number of residential properties. I might have provided the wrong number in the presentation that I've given this morning, and if I have done that, I sincerely apologise. I wasn't attempting to mislead anybody, but the fact is that our calculations have been based on the actual number that is there based on the council's records, and that calculation will be accurate as best we can do it.
Okay, any more questions, anybody? Okay, now, so I should open the debate. I could, as ward councillor, speak, but I'm not going to. Councillor McPhee.
To propose deferment, because it appears that if those houses aren't there, we're in trouble.
So seconded.
Yes, if I can briefly speak, I'm happy to second that. I think what we should see is a list of all the properties in the area and the uses to which any which are which might be considered residential but not in residential use are put, so we can make a partially qualitative assessment. The test is quantitative, but we need to think in qualitative terms. It seems to me this is over HMO'd, but we need to apply a quantitative test, but we need to be absolutely sure it's accurate.
Mr. Horsell.
Thank you. There's not a week goes by without this council receiving an application for HMO or receiving applications for certificates of lawfulness, which we tend to get in my ward for existing HMOs that have been in existence for over 10 years and are immune from enforcement action. Obviously, we've got a motion, we've got a second to defer, and I will agree with that. I think, given that it's 9.8% has been suggested, I think we do need to look at those numbers again, because if it is over 10%, then it should be automatically refused. So I'm happy to give the benefit of the doubt to officers to look into this again, but the whole thing about the 10% is not a target. You know, there's a reason for it being there, and that's to ensure that we do have a good balanced mix of different types of dwelling, and obviously we're not having any more debate because obviously a motion has been put forward, so I'll be sharing my colleagues' views there.
Councillor Gawley.
We also need to be mindful with the emerging local plan that we're trying to protect family houses, and this is absolutely a family house. And I think that by losing it to an HMO at a time when it's very, very tightly squeezed, with the numbers to be referenced and with the potential, other non-licensed HMOs, despite the evidence that the officer has given, I think I would agree to defer it, because frankly I think we need to look very, very carefully at numbers and be mindful of the emerging local plan and the need to protect family homes.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think the officer did a very good job on the presentation. It was one of the most thorough I think I've seen, and the sketches and the diagrams were excellent. I don't have any problem with the outward appearance of what this house is going to become, but I do worry considerably. We have to make decisions on the basis of hard facts, or we can't defend them in appeal, and we don't have certainty about the numbers involved and what percentage that then brings up the number of HMOs, which I must admit, as I walked around the area, I didn't see any evidence of HMOs, so they're obviously well run and properly supervised, but no, until we know for certain, I don't think I could vote to accept this application.
We have a motion for deferral on the table. Can I see those in favour, please? And that's unanimous. Yes, Sarah James, please.
Yeah, just to come in on that, obviously the data that we presented, as far as the officers are concerned, is accurate. We had no reason prior to bringing the application here to consider it anything other than that accurate, but there has been a lot of conversation about whether flats exist, whether they've been counted correctly, and various other mentions about which sites are or aren't HMOs. You will appreciate that once we are in committee, we don't have the opportunity to go away and investigate those fully. Given that we are very close to the threshold in this case, and given the uncertainty that members hold, I think it's perfectly acceptable to defer the application and bring it back to the next committee. This provides us with the opportunity to obviously investigate every single property that you are concerned hasn't been counted. So my request is that if any of the speakers or councillors today have particular sites that they feel that we need to investigate in terms of whether we are counting them as an HMO or not, that they bring that to the officer's attention so that we can bring the application back to you next month with absolute clarity on the data so that members are able to make a decision. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute comfort break anyway now. Councillor Halswell first.
Chair, can I just ask Sarah through you, if after an investigation is carried out and if it is found that the figures that have been presented are inaccurate, we do go over the 10%, is there a need to come back to committee, or should it be automatically be refused because it's over 10%?
The application is at committee. It's been deferred to be brought back to committee. So whatever the findings are, we will be bringing it back to committee next month. The recommendation will take account of the outcome of anything that we look into during that interim period.
Okay, 5-minute comment break. Take your report, please.
Good morning. So this is another application for change of use from a C3 house to an HMO. This is for a 6-bed HMO, not a 7-bed, so it's C4 use. And we're in the urban area of Bath in Southdown. Just a brief context showing the number of existing HMOs in the street, and they're marked with the purple squares. And then this is an example of the 100-metre radius that officers use to collect the data. I think we'll go into a bit more detail of that later on in the presentation. The existing proposed site plan, so generally there's not a lot of changes going on, both externally or on the building. At the moment, on the front drive, there's a planter at the front, so that's being removed to enable a bit more parking space length. So you'll be providing 3 off-street parking spaces, and the applicant would apply for a drop curb licence as well, should planning permission be passed. The bin area to the rear, not the front, and the floor plans will show that there's a bike store internally towards the rear. So moving on to the floor plans, the main change at ground floor level is the garage conversion. So that will be turned into the additional bedroom, shower, WC, and that storeroom at the rear there. And the red marking on the right-hand side shows the knock-through for an existing wall to access the shower WC. Existing proposed first floor, limited changes. You can see in bed 5, they will be knocking down that wall into the larger bedroom, which is bed 1, to create more space, which will make the room meet the minimum space standard. And as a general note, all bedrooms do meet the minimum space standard, and the communal kitchen, living, dining area on the ground floor also meets the standard for 6 occupants. This probably come up again, but on site it was advised that we secure a brief floor plan, or at least confirmation that there are no changes to the loft space, and this won't be a bedroom or habitable. Instead it will be used for storage. And just on that, a bedroom in the loft wouldn't meet building regs or fire regs, I believe. So that isn't being pursued. The main changes to the front of the property, as you can see, is through the garage conversion. So you'll be losing the garage door, and that will be replaced with a more typical domestic style window. So as noted in the officer report, the HMO density, including should this application be passed, would be 5.9%, with a total of 7 HMOs in the area. So that is under the 10% threshold. And there's also no sandwiching either. This slide has just been included, similarly to David's, just to show obviously how we count properties that are clipped within the radius. So towards the bottom left-hand corner, you can see a purple square just on the edge of the radius. So that's just to demonstrate that that property has been included, so that HMO has been included in the calculation. Obviously, the one at the very bottom of the screen hasn't, because that's outside of the radius. And that's just a closer example there, how 110 has been counted. So for the reasons set on the officer report, the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Ed. Public speaker time now, Chris Jones.
Thank you. So number 16 was selected for its lawful ability to be converted into an HMO. This area is of lower concentration. It's a 5-bed property with generous amenity, and the existing layout can accommodate 6 or more occupants. This is established by national space standards. The proposal will place no further demands on drainage, and the relevant sections of the building regulations will be satisfied, including approved document H, which manages the disposal of waste and drainage. Converting the front section of the garage was discussed on site into a single bedroom is driven by fire safety and inclusivity. The bedroom will be accessed via the stair core rather than the kitchen that would present a fire risk. The downstairs WC includes a wash hand basin and adequate mechanical ventilation to satisfy sanitary regulations. And amenity storage is located at the rear to minimise refuse from being stored at the front of the property. The cycle storage is also accessed via the house. Hard-standing finishes will be provided that are durable, and that offers additional security for bikes, encouraging uptake. Transport connections are fantastic in this area. There are several bus stops within close proximity, and Oldfield Park railway station is also walkable. Cycle routes are well established and secure storage is provided as discussed. Studies also suggest that rental accommodation often results in less demand on the car. Nevertheless, the existing parking arrangements will be improved by increasing the width of the drop curb, providing full access to 3 off-street parking spaces. Bain's Planning Department considered consulting their highways team unnecessary, but historic reports have been undertaken concerning neighbouring HMO applications, and they conclude that there will be no significant harm on the local highway. In accordance with Article 4, number 16 Alderley Road has the capacity to accommodate another HMO. Sandwiching does not occur, and the density calculation, when including number 16, is well below the 10% threshold. The aspiration here isn't to maximise the number of occupants. This is a small HMO by definition. The intention is to provide a high standard of accommodation that's compliant with licensing criteria. Article 4's purpose is to monitor and control the number of HMOs. This directive is heavily endorsed by residents. And this is a well-considered and compliant scheme. Proposals categorically satisfy policy and directives, and the Planning Department's recommendation to approve should be upheld.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Barrow.
Thank you. And I'd firstly like to thank all the members of the committee who went on the site visit on Monday. I think you could see quite clearly on that visit what a good house this would be for a family, and not just as a starter home. This would be a great home for a growing family. How depressing then that rather than sell or even rent this for that use, the owner has opted to create an HMO in an area with a high concentration, although not technically at the maximum level. As has been said earlier, 10% should not be seen as a target. Families cannot easily find affordable homes in Bath. I know this from personal experience. We are forced to live outside the place we need to be in because there are no longer houses for our families within our price range. This HMO will inevitably be marketed to our growing student population. I understand that there are around 29,000 students spread across our 2 universities. This is approximately a third of Bath's population. In 2024 to 2025, there were approximately 8,500 purpose-built student accommodation rooms. So this is clearly a deficit which is currently being met by the rapid numbers of family homes being converted into student homes. I have no objections to students per se, but I do object to the consequences for our communities. For example, when coupled with a falling birth rate, it doesn't take a genius to see the impact this will have on the viability of our local schools. With more families living outside the city, more have to commute in by bus, since bus services are not reliable for anyone who has to get anywhere by a particular time, such as for work or education. So there will be a knock-on impact to and from the city with increased traffic, higher pollution and worse air quality. I fear that the 6 bedrooms will attract 6 occupants with cars, of which only 3 can be accommodated on site. Yes, this house is well served by buses to Bath University, but please bear in mind a car is often a requirement for certain courses, particularly those with placements such as pharmacy, social workers, teachers and in childcare. These extra parked cars will make navigating this narrow road difficult for waste and recycling vehicles and emergency vehicles. I think the expectation that bins and bikes will be kept in the back and then wheeled through the only communal space are frankly laughable. I feel saddened for the student whose room will be at street level and will also have the joys of the bins to look at, and on hot days probably the smell. I am not certain that a loo directly off the kitchen is ideal. Is this even allowed? Bathrooms should be easily accessible from all bedrooms, ideally on the same floor, and not only accessible through another bedroom or kitchen. There will be at least 5 unrelated people upstairs having to share a single loo and bathroom. In my view, this plan is ill thought through without the users of the property in mind. As a council, we won't benefit. This is another council tax we won't be able to collect, but with bins that we must. Is this fair? As far as I can see, the only beneficiary is once again a landlord who is laughing all the way to the bank. Government planning policy is pro-development, naively believing that this will address the housing shortage. As we know, this is overly simplistic and will make the problem worse. Losing another family house will mean, in reality, 2 houses will need to be built elsewhere. If you want to safeguard the green space outside of Bath, our planning principles need to safeguard family housing within Bath, and I think the local plan, or the emerging local plan, will address this. But please don't be influenced by what the planning inspector has done previously. Please vote to keep this keep this house as a family house. Please refuse this HMO application on the grounds of a poor plan, lack of suitable bathroom provision to the occupants, as well as the adverse impact to the community, including increased parking in this narrow street and the wider impact on air quality and on our local carbon footprint. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Questions or officers? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Is it possible to call up the ground floor plan, please? Thank you. So, looking at the right-hand side then, so the bin storage is at the top there, where you see the 2 bicycles. Is that correct?
The bin stores indicated on the site plan is just to the rear of the house.
Okay, so we can see them there, where the 2 bicycles are. We can then see the bins up towards the top on the right-hand side. So if we go back to that previous one, so can you show me how you're going to get the two 240-litre wheelie bins, the 2 44-litre glass and plastic boxes, and the 2 90-litre cardboard recycling sacks from where they are there to the pick-up point for the refuse collection?
The occupants will just have to carry that through the house.
So can you explain the route on that? I can't see how you're going to drag 2 240-litre wheelie bins through that design. And if you are, then those figures don't add up, because that's not communal space. There should be corridors to allow you to move waste.
I think similar. I think yeah, you would go through the double doors there that show going through from the kitchen dining to the garden, and you carry it through the hallway and out the front door. That's how they would do it.
I'm not. So you think that's feasible? Do you to bring those 240-litre bins through that maze of the double doors, around the dining table, through another door into a corridor and out the front? I mean, currently, when we visited and looking at the bins are stored where the cars are currently, and that's not proposed on this.
Because they're trying to provide 3 parking spaces at the front now instead of 1, so that means that the bins can't be at the front anymore.
So they sacrificed the bin storage at the front to put more cars parking in. Okay, thank you. The second question is, I mean, I don't know if it's compliant, but it was mentioned by Councillor Romero, a toilet that exits straight out into a kitchen. Do we feel that's a good idea in planning terms?
I believe the way it's been designed does or would meet building regs. So yeah, I think officers are satisfied that that is okay.
I mean, we're not talking about your average family home now. We're talking about a home with 6 adults in. But you're saying it's compliant, even though it may not be a good idea.
I don't think officers don't think it's not a good idea. It meets building regs. There are 2 more toilets upstairs as well. So 3 toilets, 2 showers. We feel that's suitable for 6 occupants.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gawley.
I would point out that one of the loos upstairs doesn't have a hand basin. I mean, I don't know whether that would be acceptable nowadays in building a current bathroom, but I think there's a question about that. I have a question about the amenity for the if you could go to the downstairs plan for the person who's going to occupy bed 6, because that is looked down on from the road, so it's obviously it's not that there's an element of privacy there. I don't understand why it's not at the other end of the house where the store is. You could put the store then where bed 6 is, and you could get over the issue of the bikes coming through the kitchen, dining, hallway area, which I don't understand the design for that. It seems to me illogical and poor design. So I do question, about the, the loo in the kitchen, opening off the kitchen, where the bed is. I have a bedroom bed of 6, and the fact they're not doing anything for the toilet upstairs to put in an additional hand wash basin for 6 people. I mean, I have a real question about the design for this one, and whether it's seen to be appropriate. And the hygiene factor of bringing, as my colleague said, bringing the bikes and the bins through the chicane of the kitchen is, again, I have a question about the design.
Is there a specific, it's just a question about the design in general?
I'm just wondering how it meets building regulations and fire regulations and hygiene regulations.
We've been told that it does, and they would have to get that signed off anyway. And so I think there's one question there I can answer in relation to overlooking of the bedroom. What I'd say is it's sort of quite a fairly built-up urban area. You've got houses on both sides of the street. There's a level of sort of mutual overlooking in these environments anyway. I think at the moment you've got a living room on ground floor, which someone could look into at the moment already. I think that's just the nature of urban areas. And we don't think having a bedroom at ground floor is necessarily adverse to that occupier.
Sarah James.
Yeah, if I can come in there. Thank you, Chair. There's various discussions in relation to the configuration of the design. We're not here to redesign this or to even comment on how it could be designed differently, because we don't know what the constraints are with regard to that. So we have to obviously consider the plans that are before us. A couple of things. It is not unusual, even for family houses, to sometimes have to bring bikes and bins through properties where they're terraced. There isn't always the opportunity to place such items in front of the house. There is some consideration of what the impact of that would be on the occupants, possibly, with regard to bringing those through the house itself, but that would be the same if it were a family house. That is actually a fairly generous provision in terms of the communal living space, so there is an opportunity to do that, but whether that is an acceptable impact is obviously for members to consider. Just another comment on the bathroom upstairs with regard to the hand basin. There are different ways of addressing that. I know that there's certainly ways of having integrated toilets and hand basins, so it's quite likely that they would be able to provide some form of hand basin. But in any event, as the officer has said, it needs to meet building regulations approval. If it meets building regulations approval, that's okay, and that can obviously be put in as shown. But if it didn't and it wasn't there, it still, from a planning perspective, would be an acceptable proposition. And as the officer said, with regards to the front ground floor bedroom, even though it is at the front, there is a fair separation distance between that property and the property to the front, and it's not considered to be an unacceptable level of harm for the occupants to be residing in that downstairs bedroom. So we don't feel that there's any overlooking issues. Overall, in terms of this debate, these considerations relate to essentially whether the occupancy is acceptable in terms of its impact on the amenity of the people who are using it, and that is a matter for the decision maker to assess. Officers have presented it on the basis that we consider it meets planning policy and is acceptable in all other regards, but that is for members. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's push it slightly further. I remind members to ask more precise questions rather than trying to get an officer opinion on something that's not factual. Councillor Jackson.
I think it's a fact that you can, when you've got this level of occupancy, have the council will issue a bag and not a bin. And this happens with flats. It certainly happened with a residence in my ward where there were 5 adults in a 3-bed flat, and they had these sort of bag things issued. But whether that is or not, I'm just trying to work out in my mind how you would accommodate any recycling facility with the green bins, but perhaps that's not very well. And the other important question, though, is it not the case that 3 parking spaces is actually slightly above the parking allowance for a residence like this?
So the recycling, I assume, is amongst the other bin storage at the rear of the site. Yeah, the parking provision does exceed our standards. So our policy says for property of this size in this area, a maximum of 1 off-street parking space. Obviously, we're providing 3, but I think considering, I think you can tell from the site visit, there is a fairly constrained road for parking. So I think officers felt that that could sort of be seen as more as a positive in this instance, that providing off-street parking it would be a good thing here.
Councillor Crossley.
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually a further on from that question. By extending the area for car parking, you're extending the area of drop curbs. And although this is a narrow road, so cars are often parking half and half, what you're then doing is reducing the amount of space available for cars to park in the road, which is already fairly limited. So is there any policy on that about houses that are effectively privatising the front public curb of their house by extending the drop curb area?
So that isn't in our planning policies. I think with the extent of the proposed drop curb, you're probably only losing max one on-street space there anyway, because on the right hand side site plan, that first left hand section, that's an existing drop curb. So they could just extend that for 3. So I think you're probably only losing 1 on-street parking space by dropping that curb.
Councillor Horsall.
Thank you. This is a factual question. We've got an Article 4 direction within the City of Bath, haven't we, to make sure that any change of use from C3 to C4 requires plan permission. Is that correct? Would it normally be permitted development had we not got an Article 4 direction in place?
I believe so. Sarah, confirm.
As far as I'm aware, that this is brought to you because of the Article 4 direction, otherwise it would be permitted.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Now, whereas I agree and I accept the officer's assessment on we're not here to redesign, but surely we are here to ensure that the feasibility and viability exist. Otherwise, you could put the bin store on the first floor. You could put the bike store in one of the bedrooms. So there has to be an element of what we're seeing here is realistically going to work in practice and not affect the public amenity of the neighbours by them not sticking to the design that exists.
Is that a question, Councillor Hughes?
Well, I'm just after some clarification because I don't think this design is particularly viable in terms of where the bin stores and the bike stores
That's
are.
a question, thank you.
So I'll come back on that, Councillor Hughes. The impact or the effect upon occupants is a material planning consideration. So residential amenity is something you can take into account when making the assessment, as opposed to whether it could be an alternative design, which is not something we can take into account.
Councillor Leach.
Yes, on that subject of the bin stores, I think that having them in the back there is not going to be found at all convenient, that what will end up happening in practice is probably of the 3 parking spaces in the front of the house, the one on the left will be sacrificed to become, you know, where the bins are stored and where the recycling bins are kept, you know, when they need to be put out. I'm just wondering if the use of the property does take away one of those 3 outside parking spaces, does that materially affect the acceptability of the design from a planning point of view?
No, I think if you were to lose one of the off-street spaces and relocate a bin store to the front, I think that would still be supported by officers.
Councillor Crossley.
Can the officer comment on the accuracy or otherwise, or the implication of the first objection concerning the sewage issue and the drainage of the property, and was that looked into, and can you give us an update on that?
So I think that's covered towards the end of the officer report. Bear with me. I think in summary, it's that falls under separate legislation, and that the change of use to an HMO isn't considered to sort of significantly affect any existing drainage issues that may exist.
So the increase from a small family home to a large HMO will have no impact on the use of toilet and washing facilities?
So going from 5-bed house to a 6-bed HMO, it's sort of hard to confirm whether toilets are going to be used more or not. But I think what officers were saying is that the change of use doesn't inherently increase the risk of more harm to any existing drainage issues that may exist.
Sarah James.
Yeah, just to come back and say the property is already on mains drainage, I assume, and therefore that would be the ongoing situation. The impacts and differences between the occupancy as a family home and as an HMO would not be material in the context of making this decision.
Okay, I'll just open the debate. Councillor Crossley's ward, Councillor, you can open the debate.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the site visit. We had 2 visits to Southdown. We don't normally get anything to Southdown, but on Monday we had 2, so I hope you enjoyed your tour around the patch that I represent. What we've got here is just a continuing growth of HMOs, and we have policies that restrict and control those, but it's quite clear, in my view, that we are, as a committee, working against policies that need severely tightened. So therefore we can't really say that we want to reject this just because it's another HMO, because it doesn't, as the officer pointed out, it only increases the percentage to just about 6%, which is well within target range. However, what I want to put to you is that this is a huge loss of amenity to neighbours, not just direct neighbours either side, but neighbours in the area, as we see more and more of our houses turning into HMOs and students. And I've got nothing wrong with students. I fully supported all the student accommodation that was built along the Lower Bristol Road. I know not everyone did, but I think what we need is much more student accommodation that's built, purpose-built, rather than the misappropriation of family homes to student homes and HMOs. Because what you're effectively doing is changing the nature of communities. And to me, the nature of a community is an important part of what planning is about. Planning has to build balanced communities, communities that work for the long term and not just for a couple of small, well, very large commercial institutions. And so I personally think that we should be refusing this application, and I'm quite happy to give you a motion and some reasons if you want now, or do you want to have the debate first?
I'm quite content to receive the motion and your reasons for it.
So I think we can refuse this application on loss of amenity to neighbours, parking restrictions. There's too much loss of curb, further restricts the amenity of other neighbours and visitors to park there. And I think, so they're my two meanings, loss of amenity and loss of parking.
Do you have a second to that at all? Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I'm happy to support the motion. Whether Councillor Crossley wanted to include it, I think the feasibility of the design is poor. I think trying to squeeze 6 into this house is an overdevelopment, but I'm happy with the reasons given by Councillor Crossley.
Can I comment on that?
Sarah James, please.
If I can just comment on the reasons for refusal that are proposed, there is no right to park on the highway. So my advice to members is that with regards to the loss of ability to park on the highway, that would not form a very defensible reason for refusal. The amenity impacts are something that we consider and have obviously refused other applications on. We obviously, when we do that, we need to put forward clear explanation of what we feel those harms would be. Our planning policies are based upon mixed communities. That's why we have a percentage limitation on how many HMOs we can have excuse me, in an area. However, amenity is a valid reason for considering this application, so impacts on existing occupants, proposed occupants, is something that I say we could put forward and defend, but we would need to understand what the harms were. Thank you.
Councillor Crossley.
I think this loss of amenity, we are changing our communities, and as we drive out families, we change drastically the community mix, and driving out families who have children and grandparents or whatever also adjust in the long term the balance of other facilities that are provided for those communities, where GP practices go, where schools go, etc., where buses go. So it's all very well to say, you know, we've got 2 very good connections for the student buses, and we certainly do have. And I recognise the fact that the use of those students' buses has increased overall the number of buses for all of the residents in Southdown. But there comes a point where you lose too many family homes. You have radically changed the nature of a community. And I think that we're in danger of doing that over the whole of the southwest of Bath, as all these developers come in and say, this is the cheapest area, we'll just buy these houses up. And that's not just Southdown, it's the whole of the southwest of Bath. All 4 communities are suffering this thing. And I think we, as a planning committee, need to be looking at the overall balance of well-being for our whole community much more rigorously, and perhaps when we revise our planning policies, we need to strengthen that area.
Councillor Jackson.
Could possibly bring Councillor Crossley back down to earth. If you have small children, you can use a heck of a lot of water, I can tell you. And I don't think that the question of sewage and the drainage and so on wouldn't stand up in any case. You don't have a right to park outside your house or even near your house. They could block, somebody could park across, block them in, that probably will happen. We have to make our decisions on the basis of existing policies, and we have a policy that restricts the number of HMOs to 10% of dwellings. This falls well below it at 5 point something, and no donating, and there's no, or sandwiching in, and there's none of that here either. And, well, my son, who lived in a similar sort of HMO in Bangor, says it's really important for students to live in the community, get civilised, learn about putting bins out at the right time, and I don't think we should deny them that. They probably can't afford one of those posh rooms in the halls of residence on the Lower Bristol Road anyway. So I'm going to vote against this motion, and I'll propose that we accept the officer's recommendation when, as I hope, it fails, because it can't be defended at a...
Councillor Halsall.
I will disagree with Councillor Jackson. I feel, as Councillor Crossley has suggested, that a 6-bedroom HMO on this particular site is an overdevelopment, and it will have a harmful impact on future residents if it were to be approved, and on the neighbours. This committee constantly has raised concerns about the current policy, and accepts, yes, it is in compliance with the policy, but there's a wider issue and a wider matter of principle that we are looking at changing our policies. That, whilst that's not a material consideration, doesn't really carry any weight because we haven't gone to full consultation on the local plan yet. I do feel, as a matter of principle, we should be protecting our communities and ensure we have a good balance. And also, a lot of mention has been raised, a lot of people in the room have raised about the fact that it's the students. HMOs aren't just student properties, they could be for NHS workers, they could be for people who just come out of prison, for example. But I do feel that we need to ensure that in a more affordable part of the city, we need to be retaining family homes.
Councillor Leach.
I'd like to say that I agree with Councillor Jackson. I think that though there might be things about this application which are not ideal, ultimately I don't think we have defensible reason under the existing policies to disagree with the officer's recommendation. This is not the place to be anticipating future policy changes which might well be sometime down the road.
Councillor Gawley, did you indicate? You did.
Well, I think there's also an issue for the amenity of the future residents of this, because I think this is a poor design. I take the point that we can't, we can't redesign it, but I think it's a poor design. I think there's an element of over-provision of cars, where there could be a bike shed and a bin store, and I think that the provision of the bedroom in the front rather than the back is questionable. But really, we need to be mindful of the fact that we are trying to defend family homes, and we will be doing that in the future in the forthcoming local plan. So I think that in terms of the residential amenity for the future residents of this, as well as the neighbours, I think we should be rejecting it and asking for better designs if we are going to have this continuing progress of family homes being turned into HMOs. We need to make sure they're decent places for people to live.
Any more speakers? Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Councillor Gawley there. I mean, I think for me, 6 bedrooms is an overdevelopment. And by doing that, it's compromised the design. And I think that affects not, and I think so there is an amenity issue with the residents of this house, as well as the wider area that has been explained by Councillor Crossley. So, but I do believe that this design is compromised for the residents due to being overdeveloped.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table to refuse. Those in favour? And those against? That is defeated. Councillor Jackson, you want to do a motion?
Thank you. I'll propose that we accept the officer's recommendation for the conditions already given. But I think, I can't remember if the officer put in a condition about not using the roof space. So I think that might be quite important. But basically, we accept the officer's recommendation.
Seconder? That's what I need a second. No, but hold on, please.
Can we have to just answer that point that Evan made about roof space?
So at the moment, there isn't a condition suggested in relation to restricting the loft space for a bedroom, for example. That condition isn't on there at the moment.
So Chair, can I... cannot be used for accommodation.
I couldn't even get up into the loft space to have a look at it.
So I do want a seconder, please. Councillor Leach.
I'm happy to second this with that additional condition on the loft space. Yeah.
Councillor Simon.
Is that we invite Councillor Jackson to change a motion to delegate to permit so that an appropriate condition can be inserted.
Okay, Jackson, yes? Okay. Your motion now to approve a condition being added and delegate to permit. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried. We are now on to the next item on the agenda, the Coach House of Wellow, and 20%.
Okay, so this next application isn't an HMO. It's a replacement dwelling in the Greenbelt in Lidford. So I think quite a few of you came to site, which was probably quite helpful because it can be quite a difficult site to understand from plans. So hopefully that was beneficial for members. This is just an aerial context and showing the site outlined in red. There are two other properties in proximity. The one directly or closest is just a residential property. The slightly larger property you see towards the southeast is a listed building. Again, just a bit more of the rural or semi-rural context of Midford. Some site photos here, showing the existing house and garage. These are towards the rear of the house. So existing and proposed site plans is probably quite helpful just to get a general feel of what's going on. Existing on the left, proposed on the right. So in summary, obviously replacing the whole dwelling, but the built form is sort of being removed from the lower part of the site and being relocated towards the top of the site. These are existing and proposed elevations. They're quite useful because you can see a green dashed line shows the outline of the existing dwelling compared to the proposed, and that format will continue throughout. Obviously, as noted in the officer report, one of the main policy considerations on this is whether the replacement dwelling or the new dwelling is materially larger than the existing. So in the officer report, we have identified that there is a slight increase. So in terms of volume, there's a 9% increase. And in terms of floor area, there's an approximate 30% increase. But for the reasons set on the officer report, we feel that those increases are acceptable and that the new dwelling wouldn't appear materially larger than the one it is replacing. Again, this is another existing proposed elevational comparison. So you can see the built form being pulled away from the lower part of the site. And again, another view here. So these plans show the existing proposed elevations within a wider context. So you can see the topography of the site there, just to give it a bit more context. Again, even wider context here, so it's set down in the hill, as you would have felt on site. So it's, the material is considered to be appropriate. We have attached a condition to secure samples, but this is just a palette to demonstrate the type of stone and the cladding that is proposed. And those are the two, well, they're the only two, the predominant building materials for the new house. These are the existing floor plans here, so the ground floor on the left and the first floor on the right. And this is the proposed. You can see how the built form is being pulled up from the bottom of the site and sort of inserted towards the top instead. So the scheme does build into the slope as well, so that is one of the aspects that reduces the visual and spatial impacts and that increase. You can see on the left-hand side there's a courtyard, like a landscape garden courtyard. And for the reasons in the officer report, officers are recommending permission subject to conditions and also a legal agreement to secure the scheme as self-built.
Questions, officer? No questions? Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I think so. We touched on the site visit. Could you give us a bit of a history about the building and what's its age? How has it reached the point that it has?
So, in terms of the building has been, or there has been structures on the site for a very long time. I think the building was substantially altered and extended in the 70s. Our list of building officers have done a fair bit of research along with the applicant to confirm that the building isn't of historic interest or significance, and that it's not curtilage listed, nor is it considered a non-designated heritage asset. So we're satisfied that its replacement is suitable.
Councillor Jackson?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit puzzled, well, I'm very puzzled actually, because of the defiance of all eco-principles that are involved in the demolition of a house which I would certainly like to live in. I think it's most attractive. But the question is, first of all, why have we just got the one application here and not an application for demolition of the existing building, and then separately an approval of the proposed designs for the new house? And secondly, do we have any policy which constrains demolition of a perfectly good dwelling?
So because we're outside of the conservation area, there isn't a requirement to submit a demolition notification. So that is sometimes the case with buildings or structures in the conservation area, but we're outside of the conservation area here. My understanding is that the existing building is not actually very good from a thermal performance point of view, and obviously with the new dwelling, it's been shown to comply with our sustainable construction policy, which I highlight is quite a high bar. I think it does exceed building regulations, so they have shown that it will be a very good sort of build from that point of view.
I thought it was in the Cotswolds, AONB and Greenbelt, and therefore the demolition would be constrained.
Yes, we are in the Greenbelt and AONB, but I don't think that, I think the requirement for notification of demolition is only for conservation areas.
Any other questions at all? Sarah, can you help at all?
Just to confirm, the application's been correctly made. In the description of development, it does refer to the demolition of the building alongside the construction of the extension, etc. So there is no requirement to put a separate demolition application in.
Okay, Councillor Gawley, we're up in debate now.
Thank you. I know this house because I've lived in Midford for many years, and then in Southstoke. I think it's interesting because there's a very beautiful listed building straight in front of it, and then a very higgledy-piggledy cottage stroke coach house behind, which was apparently not a coach house. I think what's being proposed here is something that does have architectural merit and ecological merit and will be more fit for purpose. I think the fact that the design is being drawn back from the listed building is good. It's not very visible from the wider landscape because it's hidden behind the other two houses. And I think what's being proposed here is an asset. There are other contemporary buildings within Southstoke and Midford, and so this joins that group. So I basically think it's probably a really good idea to have something that's a better architectural and ecological and biodiversity merit than what's there at the moment.
Are you moving something at all?
Yes, sorry. So I'm moving that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Seconded? Councillor Horsall?
Yeah, I'm happy to second the motion to support the officer's recommendation. The question that Councillor Hughes raised, I was a little bit concerned about initially, about whether the building would be recognised as a statutory heritage asset, for example, but I'm satisfied that it's not. It's been significantly altered over the years, and I think that the benefits of replacing the dwelling with a highly sustainable new build outweigh any potential harms that would be caused by the loss of the existing building.
Councillor Hughes?
I mean, generally, I wouldn't disagree with the motion. My concern, and it's something that Councillor Gawley asked a question on the site visit, was the use of materials. And I'm concerned with its location. The use of the roof materials in particular are not really appropriate in that location. So on that, so I do have concerns that would probably tilt me towards not supporting this because of the materials, and whether there is any scope to review that, I don't know. If there isn't, then that does concern me.
Councillor McPhee? Thank you. Any other speakers at all? There's no other speakers. We go to the vote on the permit. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Okay. That's that item concluded. We're going to take a 2-minute break now whilst the officers change over. Anyone needs to use facilities, please use them now. Okay, now all returned, we'll make a start. Can I welcome Jane Burr? Who's missing? Oh, Ian, what's that? We'll give Ian a couple of seconds, if not, we'll start. Okay, we're waiting for Ian now. Okay, everybody's back. I welcome Jane Burr's committee. I think it's your first time here, Jane, is it?
The tree preservation order this year. Thank you, Chair.
Can you please present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm presenting to you a tree preservation order which was made in November last year. Just a little bit of background to it. The reason why the site was assessed was because we received, and that's the planning officers, myself received calls from local residents and councillors, and also an inquiry from the Forestry Commission relating to tree felling on this site, which resulted in a site visit and an assessment of the site. Oh.
Sorry, one moment.
Oh.
Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the tree preservation order map. It's just an extract from the whole document to show you roughly the location we're talking about. Myself and a colleague visited the site and assessed the trees on this site and determined that they were of sufficient amenity for a tree preservation order to be made, and it was justified in terms of expediency because of tree removals that had already taken place. This is just to give you a bit of a context of where the site is. It's obviously within the doubly inscribed World Heritage Site. It's outside conservation areas. The green hashing that you see on the east and west sides form part of the conservation area. That's the Bath Conservation Area. The site is within Ivy Avenue, and Ivy Avenue is a cul-de-sac in terms of traffic movement, but there are various public rights-of-way and footpaths that lead between Ivy Avenue, Hillcrest Drive, Coronation Avenue. You have an open space to the south that you can see as green, which is Hillcrest open space, and the linear park is to the north. This gives you an idea of the canopy cover in the area generally. This, as you can see, is the site which is directly central to the aerial photograph. That is the site prior to tree felling, so you can see that significance of the canopy cover in the area at that time. These are street views prior to felling. Oh, lost it again. And the reason why I've put these up is just to give you an idea of what residents and users of Ivy Avenue as a through route would have experienced prior to the tree felling. These are photographs that were taken during the site visit to show the site. There was quite a discrete area of tree felling in the southern corner of the site. And this is sort of semi-panoramic view around the site from the road to show you what's left and where the area of felling took place. There was a question about amenity and general assessment and how officers consider these assessments. So I thought I'd present to you the assessment form. This is only a part of a tool that we use. We obviously look at the site as it is now and what opportunities it has to contribute further for public amenity in the area. So we're looking at visual amenity and visibility to the public, overall health, vigour and appearance of the trees and what the tree components of the site, suitability of location, future management and other special factors, for instance, contribution to the character of the area and green space, green infrastructure and the like. Based on that assessment, and we felt that it was appropriate to make the tree preservation order. It's presented to you today because we received initially 2 objections to the order, so it would be inappropriate for an officer to determine it. A decision has to be made on whether to confirm it or not to confirm it. Just to highlight that there is actually additional addendum to this the report that was initially presented to you. The update report highlights it's purely because one objection has been removed, so it was just to highlight that part of the report is now requires an update in respect to that. Your officer recommendation is to confirm the tree preservation order without modification. Thank you, Chair.
Public speaker time now. Craig Harding, please.
Try again. Is that better? Chair, as a member of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I respectfully object to the confirmation of this tree preservation order. I recognise that the officer has recommended confirmation. However, members are required to exercise independent planning judgment, and the statutory test must be applied carefully under Section 198 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. An order may only be confirmed where it is expedient in the interest of community that requires demonstrable public community value and a clear and present need for statutory protection. In this case, that threshold has not been robustly evidenced. An independent arboricultural assessment prepared by Tibbs Tree Surgeons has been submitted. That report concludes that the trees are predominantly low quality and self-seeded specimens of limited arboricultural merit, with identified structural defects. Importantly, there is no competing arboricultural assessment before members that dispute those findings. Prior to my ownership, the land had not been managed for a considerable period. It has become significantly overgrown, with scrub and vegetation encroaching towards the public highway. I received correspondence from the council requesting that the overgrowth to be cut back from the road. The limited works undertaken prior to the provisional order were carried out on professional advice. Tibbs Tree Surgeons identified dieback, decay and structural weakness within certain specimens. In his professional opinion, those trees were declining and presented a foreseeable safety risk, particularly given their proximity to the highway. The removals were therefore undertaken for safety and selective thinning reasons. They were not part of a programme of wholesale clearance. I also fenced the boundary to enhance public safety. The intention was responsible management of an eclectic site, not circumvention of planning control. I appreciate that the site provides greenery within the street scene. However, visibility alone does not automatically equate to significant public amenity value. The question for members is whether these particular trees in the present condition and quality justify long-term statutory control. There is no live development proposal before the Council. The possibility that lawful works could occur in future is not in itself evidence of clear and present threat. The statutory test requires demonstrable expediency, not precaution alone. The officer report places weight on collective character of the site and woodland designation. However, woodland status should not elevate unmarked scrubland. of limited structural quality into category of significant public amenity without clear supporting evidence of condition, longevity and cohesive structure. Protection must be proportionate. A tree preservation order is a serious and enduring statutory restriction. It should be reserved for trees of clear public importance. On the professional evidence before you that the threshold has not been met in this instance, for those reasons I respectfully request the committee decline to confirm this order. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Neil Wood.
Thank you, Committee. I wish to address issues in respect of Section 198 of the Town and Country Planning Act, and in particular that it's expedient and in the interest of amenity. I'm a resident of Ivy Avenue and speak not only as an individual, but on behalf of 45 other residents of Ivy Avenue and Hillcrest Drive. The land, as the committee would have seen, is about a quarter of acre of sycamore, ash, laurel, hazel, elder and cherry, and not only incorporates Mr Harding's land, but other land owned by other individuals. This was planted in the estate before it was built in the 1970s, during the building of the estate, and then subsequently by me and other residents during the 80s when we were young, in what was otherwise a barren slope. Some of these trees are 50 to 60 years old, but only a quarter of their total lifespan, and that will need to be considered. I wish to draw the committee's attention to the significant amenity value. This is visible directly by 10 houses, daily by the 28 houses of the cul-de-sac, and also by hundreds of people who walk and drive past. The general amenity value to be considered includes general well-being, the accepted reduction of stress, noise reduction, and the connection of nature in an otherwise urban environment. The committee visit on Monday would have seen the vast difference between the remains of the woodland that has been felled and that remains. This is the only woodland in 3/4 of a mile of that site. It's visible from the upper slopes around Bath and is a visible break to urban cityscape, and it softens the view. I agree that individual trees may not be TPO worthy, but the Act states that a group of trees or woodlands are considered. This woodland has native trees, considerable character and public amenity, and is a well-established landmark. The trees are important for the environment and biodiversity. They are native trees. They are home to many birds, owls, woodpeckers, fox dens, and also badgers, and this is an important wildlife corridor in the area. The facts about trees are well established, but specific facts I wish to address, in particular the fact that this is 50 to 75% on a slope, and a root system prevents soil erosion and holds the soil in place. A tree already at the top has been removed, and that has led to some slippage. Particularly in respect of significant rainfall, we see that running down the road of Ivy Avenue, but these trees prevent that, and there is no runoff while those trees remain in place. To address the expediency, the person objecting to the application bought the land in 2023 and made it clear that he wishes to cut down the trees to build houses. He's already felled a load of these trees, and the TPO was put in place to prevent further felling. I wish to address Mr Harding's concerns that he submitted, as I believe some of them are accurate, false or misleading. So I'm just conscious of the time that I've got. He said that neighbours would provide statements in respect of support of this application. That is incorrect. And in fact, I did stipulate that this is amenity land over which we have access, and it is used as such.
Thank you. Councillor Romero.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again for your second visit to Southdown on Monday. I hope you've also had a chance to look at the photographs I circulated yesterday evening, which show the woodland as it was before it was decimated. I was first aware of the wanton destruction of the trees when I received phone calls, emails and texts from several very upset residents who had woken up to the sound of chainsaws destroying a place that they feel belongs to them and is as outlined on their deeds. These trees form a part of an amenity which those at the top end of Ivy Avenue have a right to. It should not be fenced off or chopped down. The only positive I can find is at least we all now know who to contact when maintenance is required. As you have heard, children have played on this land. They have planted new trees some decades ago, and these trees had just reached maturity, and now they have been chopped down. Even the least inspiring of the trees had purpose, attracting all sorts of wildlife, including woodpeckers, owls and bats. Also, there was varied insect life, which we all know are so important as pollinators and as part of a rich circle of life. It is not just the loss of this woodland and the valuable contribution this habitat brought. It is also the role the trees have on the integrity of the hill. I don't know if you noticed when you visited, but the road above, Hillcrest Drive, is considerably higher than Ivy Avenue. It's at least a couple of houses higher. We have seen the impact in the past when trees have fallen in storms. The walls at the ends of the gardens of Hillcrest Drive have cracked and collapsed. A similar pattern of land seepage is happening on the other side of the road where other large trees have gone. Removing even more trees is extremely worrying for those living above the woodland, as well as upsetting for those living in Ivy Avenue. If this TPO is not granted, it will not be long before all the trees are cut down. And what then happens to the hillside? This woodland is literally holding this side of the hillside together. The TPO seeks to protect the remaining trees. I hope in your discussion you will find a way of regaining the lost trees. Please support this application for a TPO for this woodland, for the trees, for the life they hold and support, and for the stability of the hillside itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Merrill. Questions to the officer? Councillor Crosby, then Councillor Leach, then Councillor.
My question is it possible for the tree officer to instruct or the landowner to replant trees? Is that a power we have or don't have?
We don't have power to do that. However, the woodland designation means that it covers natural regeneration, any planting, and also any regrowth from the stumps or cut parts of the trees on the site as they are.
Councillor Leach.
Would the officer please clarify that the TPO does not prevent any further felling of trees, it would just allow such felling to be done in a controlled or under controls?
That's correct. One other thing, though, I need to add to that is that because of the nature of the site, if more than 5 cubic metres are proposed for felling in one calendar month, then a felling licence would be required, and a felling licence effectively takes priority over a tree preservation order. However, the Forestry Commission would consult the council if they received such an application.
Councillor Gawley.
Councillor Crosby asked the question I was going to ask.
Okay, no more questions. Open the debate. Councillor Cross, you are the ward councillor.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you very much to all the residents who contacted Dina and for her prompt response, and also the response of officers who acted so promptly on this. Sometimes councils get criticised for inactivity or slow response. On this occasion, it was very rapid, very constructive, very determined and very impactful, and in my view, very correct. This is Southdown, for those who don't know, is one of the least treed areas of the whole council area. So to lose what few we have makes that movement to an even worse position. So we need our trees. We need our trees for a variety of reasons. It's not just wildlife and amenity value and public health values for the residents who look on them or walk past them, but it's also just because we need them for the ecological value, the environmental value, the clean air they give us, a whole raft of reasons. And as I said, Southdown is short of trees, and this is a very important little cluster of trees, and we wish to remain I asked the question, could we force replanting, and the answer to that was no, but at least I hope by this we can make sure there's no further trees cut, and that actually regeneration over time will bring this little small pocket of greenery in an oasis of housing back to full life. So I fully support this and move the officer recommendation.
Your second at all? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's very important to look at this application, or to look at the TPO application in its context, where it is, and the ward councillors have explained that to us very well. There are also the important needs to have soakaways for areas where there's a large catchment of water. But I'm really looking at it a bit more closely, that it's the canopy and the spread and the wholeness that I think is important and merits the continuation of this TPO, not any particular individual sycamore or silver birch or whatever. So I'm happy to support, to second.
Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be supporting this. I mean, first of all, very good report from the officer. I think it's important to remember that we have declared an ecological emergency in Bath and North East Somerset. And at a time where we're seeing so much of our green space being offset BNG sites to other parts of the country, I think it's critical that we protect these small areas of green space. So absolutely, I support the motion.
Any further speakers? No, it goes to the vote then. Those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Now the appeals report. Any questions on the appeals report, members? Do you agree to note? That's noted. Quarterly performance report. Any questions, anybody? Do you agree to note? Okay, that's the business today concluded. And the next meeting is, Karina, please. I've lost my paperwork.
18th of March.
18th of March. Thank you.